Hey, y'all, this is Curtis Grimes, and I want to give a shout out and a special thank you to everyone associated with tncradio.live.
Welcome in to Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. I'm Tom Kelly. We're going to be with you here for the next hour talking about all sorts of interesting things on ways to help you build up your mind. We talk all the time about physical fitness on this channel, but we don't often talk about mental fitness. So we're going to talk about that. Dr. Christopher Cortman is a licensed psychologist with over 35 years and over 75,832 hours of facilitating psychotherapy. I completely made up that number. It's over 75,000, but I thought I'd throw in a few extra numbers there too. He is the author of 4 books about mental health, including Your Mind, an Owner's Manual for a Better Life, 10 Simple Truths That Will Set You Free, Take Control of Your Anxiety, and Keep the Pain in the Past, Getting Over Trauma, Grief, and the Worst Thing That's Ever Happened to You. In addition, he, in his role as a private practitioner and on-call psychologist, Dr. Cortman serves as the founder and director of the Social Black Belt, a program aimed at developing social, emotional, and behavioral awareness in people of all ages. And that, Dr. Cortman, is what I'd like to ask you about tonight, is what is the Social Black Belt? How does all that work? And is this something that we could kind of talk through over the course of the next couple of weeks to learn more about it?
Well, thank you so much for having me, as always, on your show. And I want to say, be careful what you ask for, because I just might take several months to answer that question. And I'm happy to do so, because I believe that the Social Black Belt program is something that most human beings can benefit from, because it's very practical and useful information that we can all apply in our everyday lives, regardless of who we are, where we live, or what we do. So if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little bit about where the concept came from and how we got started and what the main objective is.
That sounds great. I was going to ask you how it all got started, where it came from, and what the main objective is. So this fits in perfect.
Oh, funny you should ask, Tom. Not that funny, actually. But anyway, it was probably more than 20 years of private practice at that time when it occurred to me that we have done a fabulous job in our science of psychology at understanding whatever we've learned over 3/4 of a century of that science. But I thought a rather poor job of disseminating that information to the general public. And it seemed to me that there are a number of things that we should be teaching people, like their ABCs, like multiplication and division, important kinds of things about, how our mind works and just, what today they call social and emotional learning skills. And so I started to compile some of these things, and I was asked to give a talk years ago, and I saw an article in a magazine that said 144 books that you should have read by now. And I was embarrassed when I looked over and probably read about 2 of those books, but I thought, what a catchy title. So I entitled my talk, Tom, I don't know what it was, 8 or 10 things at that time that someone should have taught you by now. And it was a very well received talk. And I thought, this really should be a book, 10 things someone should have taught you by now. So I compiled a list of 10 things that I found myself teaching to client patients, call them patients in my office. things, again, that we all should know, and trying to change misperceptions, or what I would call myths, that we teach people. For instance, I'll give you a myth that is challenged in the very first of the 10 truths in the social black belt. And that myth is that feelings are facts. You can't change how you feel. And I actually learned that in graduate school, that terrible myth that feelings are facts. And I want to say, you know what? A broken leg is a fact. But feelings, you're not stuck feeling what you feel. Actually, you created what you feel by your perception of reality. And we're going to get into that hopefully tonight. But so the idea of, coming up with 10 things, which later became 10 truths that wanted people to know. And I met a gentleman who really impressed me as a psychologist, Dr. Harold Scenic, and he joined me in this project of mine. And we started to send our manuscript out, and with the help of a literary agent from New York City, and the publishing company that picked it up wanted to change the name from 10 Things Someone Should Have Taught You by Now to Your Mind, an Owner's Manual for a Better Life. And, at that point, we didn't care what they called it, because they were going to publish our book. And it was the first for me to be published. So we were very excited, and they went ahead and made that change. And shortly thereafter, this book was written for adults, and it was 10 truths that, again, I wish we would teach people right away in life, because they reduce our suffering and anguish and lead to a more successful and happy life. But it occurred to me, why don't we try to teach this to young people? What if we were to put this in a course and teach it? And that's, I grabbed one of the concepts from the 8th truth. And the concept was that of a social black belt. And my idea was, if you had a black belt in martial arts, you would have the highest level of training. You wouldn't look for trouble, but you could handle whatever came your way. And so my fantasy was, imagine if there was such a thing as a social black belt, and you had the skills to deal with what was coming, what you had to face in life. And when I presented that to the principal of the local high school, she was all about it, and kind of rolled out the red carpet and let us participate in a pilot study with the freshmen in high school. And, I'll get into that maybe later, but it was very, very, very positive. The results were statistically significantly positive in, attitude, knowledge, and behavior for these freshmen just by taking our class. Anyway, the idea, now, this is kind of like a boot camp kind of thing, but for the mind. In boot camp, besides shaving your head, they try to get you in the best possible shape, but also to deal with what's ahead, working as a team, as part of a military outfit, to deal with what's coming in combat and in war. Well, this, of course, is different than that, but it's to provide skills for a human to deal with the things that are coming in life. And so what are the things that are coming in life that we need some help preparing for? Well, for one thing, loss. We don't take time to tell the little ones, you're going to lose thousands of things and people along the way. Imagine telling the little kids, you're going to lose grandma, you're going to lose Muffy, all of your pets are likely to predecease you. There's a possibility your parents may break up. Your best friend's going to move away. Your first girlfriend's going to ditch you for your boyfriend, and you'll lose them both. There's going to be all kinds of things. There's going to be betrayal. There's going to be abandonment. There's going to be huge disappointment. There's going to be people lying to you. There's going to be people making promises that they are not lying about, but they just never deliver. There's going to be so much in the way of difficulties in life, and nobody gives us any understanding or skills. We have to sort of learn like in a hazing. And so the premise of the social black belt is let's teach some things that we do understand now. Let's benefit from all these years of the science of psychology and teach things to kids in a way where it's it's not that painful going down. It can be actually a pleasurable class or a helpful kind of lesson where we could get information that we've always needed so that we could deal with everyday life, and then some things that are outside of everyday life, like abuse, like trauma. Tom, we have research now that when kids are exposed to traumatic things, they pay a terrible price for that. We didn't always understand that. I don't know how much time before the break, but perhaps I can talk a little bit about the effects of trauma and what we've learned in the last 10 to 20 years about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that after. We'll go ahead and take our break now. When we come back, let's talk precisely about that.
Great.
All right. Great. All right. So we'll take our break now. We'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to TNCRadio.live, Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay right there.
Finding the right healthcare plan and insurance agent can be a challenge. Truck driving can be a dangerous job, and drivers expose themselves to unique health risks. Health insurance is an expensive but necessary expense for truck drivers. It helps protect them from unexpected high medical costs. Although truck drivers should have a health plan, many don't. Some trucking companies offer health plans for truck drivers, but if you're an owner-operator or an independent contractor, you might have to find your own health insurance policy. The Truckers Network proudly partners with the Health Plan Partner to help our members learn about the options they have for health insurance. The Health Plan Partner is dedicated to helping members of the Truckers Network find and learn about what's available to them in the marketplace. Since 1985, the Health Plan Partner has helped their clients figure out the health insurance maze we're in. Here are 6 tips from the Health Plan Partner for finding the right health plan and agent for truck drivers. Review your options with an experienced agent that specializes in health plans and can guide you in the right direction, even if it's not a plan they offer. Determine your budget. There are options for any budget, but the adage is true: you get what you pay for, so beware. Have a list of your doctors, medications, and any health history. Some plans do require a health history. Review your current plan annually if you have one to see if there are better options and rates available. Plans can change constantly. Have the plans explained to you in detail and ask a lot of questions and role-play various situations. Quite a few times we only find out what the plan doesn't cover when we need it. Again, find an agent you feel comfortable with. You need to be able to trust them and call for guidance and questions anytime. With over 25 years of experience, Health Plan Partner wants to help truckers find the right health insurance plan.
At Hotshot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hotshot Secret, powered by science.
Welcome back to TNCRadio.live, and this is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. I'm Tom Kelly. So, Dr. Chris, before we went to break, before you were so rudely interrupted, you were starting to talk about the impact that trauma has on young ones. We talked a little bit about this 2 weeks ago when we talked about how to discuss trauma, especially some of the horrible things that have been in the news. It's tough to be 7 years old in America right now.
Oh,
you know, having a grandson who's that age, I worry for him. I weep for him for just an awful lot of stuff you have to digest, and his parents do a great job of trying to control that, but they can't be with him 24 hours a day, and in this 24-hour-a-day news cycle, somebody wants to tell him bad news all the time, and plus just life has some bad news in it. So tell us about the impact that has on our young people.
Well, there's this concept called ACEs, like ACE, and it stands for Adverse Childhood Events. And an adverse childhood event would be somebody being bullied, somebody being molested, somebody watching their father punch out their mother, somebody being arrested, a very ugly, drunken episode by a parent or some such guardian. You know, anything that is traumatizing to a child, something that they observe. They don't have to be the one being hit. They could be watching their sibling being hit. Just saw a movie about that a couple of weeks ago where a boy came in watching his father just beat the tar out of his sister, and he just froze and did absolutely nothing. And she felt so horribly abandoned by her brother because he didn't help her. And for years, they both carried that because it was traumatic for both of them. And you know, they finally had a chance in the movie to talk about it years later. And she said, "Why didn't you do anything?" And he just burst into tears. I don't know. I mean, he was frozen by the horror of what was happening. And, you know, he was traumatized, but nobody laid a hand on him. And so, you know, my point is witnessing something terrible happening to anyone. You know, it could be a school event and you're watching somebody, you know, just get beat up or bullied or something. It could be one of these ACEs. Anyway, here's the point. When a child can go from 0 to 18 with a minimal amount of these adverse childhood events, it's a good thing because they have, the research says you do dramatically better. And when you have, in one study, 6 or more of these things, this was kind of a horrifying study. They found that you were 144 times more likely to stick a needle in your arm, meaning heroin, opioids, than if you had 0 of them. Just looking at nothing else but ACEs. And
can I ask you something there? So 2 kids see exactly the same event. Can it be an ACE for one kid and in one ear and out the other for another?
You know, it's a brilliant question, and I really appreciate it because it's exactly what happens sometimes, where one kid is traumatized by something and another one doesn't really even remember. So, you know what? I don't remember that. And the other one goes, "You were there. How could that?" And it just doesn't register in the same way. So yeah, that could happen. What also along those same lines is that everybody has their own unique perception of what was going on. And again, I'll go off on a tangent because that's how my brain works. But I had this family come in after they went on vacation to a country like Honduras, I believe it was, many years ago. And the very first day that they were there, some masked gentleman in with machine guns, broke into the place they rented and tied them up at gunpoint. And, they were obviously horrified and terrified about what was happening. And they all expected that they would die. And then it occurred to the gunmen, they started speaking, in another tongue, that these were not the right people. Like, oops. And
Wow.
they untied one of them and just got out of there. And what my point in bringing this up was that each one of these people had something different to share about what was traumatic for them. It was one story essentially, but it was 4 different versions. There was a mom and dad and 2 teenagers, and everybody had their own version of what upset them the most. And I thought that was fascinating because, there was a real life trauma, but it wasn't like everybody had the same take on it. So, yeah, it's a very subjective kind of thing, but it's, if you were to have a big knockdown, drag 'em out fight with your wife in front of your 7-year-old grandson, there's a pretty good chance that would line up as one of these ACE events. And it would be something stored in his memory in a traumatic fashion. So another study, probably the most fascinating of all the studies, led the former president of the American Psychiatric Association to conclude that trauma is to addiction as smoking is to cancer. And
okay,
that's fascinating.
In other words, say that one more time.
Well, I can put it the other way. Smoking is to cancer as trauma is to addiction.
Okay.
We used to think that addiction was, well, you got these bad genes that were transmitted through the generations, and you have bad genetics, and that's why you were, set up for alcoholism or drug addiction or whatever. And there's some genetic contributors for sure. But what the researchers are finding is that trauma sets people up. Having unresolved traumatic events sets people up for addictions, and even years later. So these kids get traumatized as children, and then years later, they're addicts. They're addicted to all kinds of things. And it makes sense because what they're doing as much as possible, Tom, is trying to self-medicate their horrible memories and emotions and this whole out of control feeling.
Gotcha.
So we're off on a tangent, but the point being, we have these things to deal with in life, and we're not taught skills to deal with these things. We're not. We're taught how to do word problems and geometry and all kinds of Western civilization, and then take nothing away from any of those things. But my bent is, let's give people some skills for life, and not just say things to them like, well, that's how you feel, and you can't change that. And so, my point was, let's get these truths out. Let's give people a chance to deal with all the things that will be coming to a theater near them in the course of a lifetime. You're not going through this world unscathed. If you're blessed enough to live 85 years here, you have to go through so many challenging and painful things. And that's if you've had a great life. You told the story a month or so ago about the death of your brother-in-law right in your house. And this wasn't brought on by a brutal murder, and this wasn't brought on by a suicide, and this is just life. And life in the form of death is a normal part. It's the end of a normal life, but we still have to go through challenges and losses. And as I mentioned before, so many things in the course of a healthy life without all the terrible things that people are going to do to you.
Right.
And we want to be able to understand that these things are coming, and as much as possible, how to have the skills to deal with that. One of the things I like telling people is that we're going to deal with things as if I just injected you with the world's healthiest person. And a mentally and emotionally healthy person, they have the same money as you, they have the same husband as you, they're the same age, they have the same physical health, they live in the same place, but now you have been injected with the world's healthiest person mentally. How would they deal with the very same exact issues in life? And that's the point of the social black belt. We want to give people the very best training. Doesn't guarantee them a wonderful life.
Right.
Or in any way an easy life, but just the best possible skills to deal with their lives.
That's a good place to stop at this point. We'll take our bottom of the hour break. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to TNCRadio.live, Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. I had a patient who went into her primary care physician's office and started to cry when she talked about something. And before she could even finish the topic, he was writing a script for her for an antidepressant. She complained to me and said, "I'm not depressed. I was appropriately sad over something in my life, and I wish he had understood that." So, what's the difference between sadness and depression? First of all, to qualify for a clinical depression, you have to have a bunch of symptoms for a minimum of 2 full weeks. You can't have a bad day or a painful weekend and call it a clinical depression. What are those symptoms? Well, I want to tell you about 2 of the most important symptoms that will help you understand whether you have a depression or not. The first one is dysphoria. And that means down in the dumps, low mood, melancholia, just feeling depressed. Can't get out of bed. Don't feel good about anything. Hate how I'm feeling. Again, that's not just sad because you lost your dog or because your friend's moving away. That means I feel bad all over in my life. Kind of a global feeling of low and blue. But the second most important symptom is called anhedonia. What is that? That simply is the loss of pleasure in the usually rewarding activities. Anhedonia means not hedonistic is eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. When you don't want to do the things that you normally would do, and someone says, "Come on, let's go golfing," or "There's a great movie," or "Guess who's coming to town? We got tickets." No, I don't want to do anything. That's anhedonia. I don't get joy or pleasure. If you have those 2 symptoms for at least 2 weeks, now we're talking about a clinical depression. And that's when you should get some professional help.
That's right. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but I'm doing good. I went in for a full physical yesterday, requirement by my insurance company, and the doctor was like, "Wow, you're doing good." So I was very happy to hear that.
Well, good. Yeah.
Yeah, lost some weight, blood looked good. So, yeah, all good.
Yeah, fantastic. I also had a doctor appointment yesterday and went in and, it was one of those appointments, bend over and cough and all that kind of stuff. Worst dentist ever, I'm telling you. Jamie, how are we looking out there on traffic? I think you had some updates for us while we were on break this week.
For the latest in traffic, weather, and information, catch the Morning Grind weekdays on tncradio.live.
Welcome back in tncradio.live's This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. So, Dr. Chris, you've given us a bit of an introduction here onto what the social black belt is all about, but we got a lot to cover yet. We're just starting to unpack this. So, take us to what's next here.
So we were in some schools, and each time we did a little research study, we found that the groups who took the social black belt class emerged as healthier than the class who didn't, the control group. And I asked the woman, Dr. Aisha Johnson, who was doing the research and analyzing, crunching the numbers. I said, Aisha, give me an elevator pitch for the social black belt. And she said, here's your elevator pitch. The students who took that class improved by 50% over the control group. And that's knowledge, attitude, behavior. So we were very impressed by that. And whenever I would teach it, I would get very strong reactions from the teachers who would come up to me and say, I know this isn't for me. I know you want us to learn this to teach it to the kids. And I said, of course, that's not accurate. The book was written for adults. And we just thought afterwards that wouldn't it be great to teach this to children? And so, some of the feedback I got from adults, one woman after taking the class said, I need to come in and see you. I didn't realize some of these things. And she said a few months later, she quit her job as a teacher, got divorced from what she said had been an abusive marriage for many years, and moved to her country of origin. And it all started because she took the class of the social black belt. I found that to be interesting until a couple of years later. Make a long story short, I met these two ladies randomly at Barnes & Noble, where I do all my writing. And they said, Dr. Cortman? And I said, uh-oh, do I owe you money? And they said, you taught us the social black belt class at this Second Chance School, a school in Sarasota County, Florida, where people who were expelled from other schools go to this school as a second chance to graduate. Anyway, they said, we're embarrassed to tell you that we never taught your class, because after sitting there for 2 days and hearing what you had to say, we both quit our jobs and moved on to something else. And in fact, this is our first time getting together, and you happen to be there. And I said, really? They said, yeah, we learned so much in those 2 days, and we realized we needed to be doing other things with our lives. Well, I said, is this a private, confidential kind of story, or can I share this with the assistant principal of your school, who I was in touch with still? And they said, oh, no, we love her. She knows. So I happened to call that woman that night and said, you're not going to believe who I ran into. She goes, yeah, we really miss those girls. She said, but you know what? I did teach the social black belt. I taught 9 of the truths. I didn't get to the 10th one. But I want you to know that it changed the entire complexity. It changed the dynamic of the school. This was a dog-eat-dog school. All the kids who were here were kicked out because they had all kinds of issues. But it changed. They started to understand that they weren't alone, that these other people had things in common with them, like they came from families of divorce, like they had brothers and sisters in jail, that, there were all kinds of issues. And it changed from this dog-eat-dog survival to a kind of a camaraderie and a team approach. And she said, here's the kicker. Every one of my kids graduated Triad, which is the name of the school, and none of them returned. And she said, I didn't see it as they graduated Triad as much as they graduated Social Black Belt. All the other classes had kids return. They call that recidivism, when they return back to the place where, they didn't make it in public school again. But every one of her kids did. And so that was a real ringing endorsement to me, because we have the number one school in Florida in our county, and they regularly use the Social Black Belt because they love it. The principal loves it, and the kids get it. But these kids are top percentile. They're gifted. And, it's nice to know that you can make a difference there. But this other school was the very bottom. This was a school, in order to enter in this school, you have to be kicked out of or expelled from another school just to qualify. So, having this work at both ends of the continuum was very flattering. And so it's our fantasy now to be in all of the schools in our county and beyond. But there is so much going on in the way of politics that makes it close to impossible to get a program that has there's nothing political about this. There's no affiliation to anything. There's nothing controversial, except there's a big war against social emotional learning. And it's the saddest thing, because wherever we're allowed in, the kids do well. So I know we're not talking to kids. I know your audience is adults, but I wanted them to have this background that these 10 truths work for kids. But the first book was written for adults. It didn't even occur to me till later, hey, we could put this together in a book specifically for kids. And that's the fourth book, the one that you may not know or didn't mention today. The book is just called The Social Black Belt. And the reason that was written is because a number of teachers said, this book is for adults. Do you have a teenage version? Do you have one for adolescents? And the second time somebody asked me that, I said, no, we don't. You want to write one? And I was kind of half kidding, but who I was talking to happened to be a guy named Michael Keelen, who is a master's level teacher in English. And he had great results teaching the book, even though it was an adult book. And he looked at me kind of astonished, like, you're asking me to rewrite your book? And I said, yeah, I don't have time to write it again for adolescents. Well, this guy took me up on it. And a couple of years later, we now have this book called The Social Black Belt. And it's just for adolescents. And it even has, an audio component to it. So with all of that background, I wanted everybody to have that. And now we can talk about it on the adult level, because I know that's your audience. And we can talk about this, I can talk about this to people of any profession or socioeconomic status, because it's just 10 basic, or as the book says, 10 simple truths that help set you free.
The truths are the truths. I guess the difference is how you talk about it, but the truths are still the truths, right? Regardless of your age.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So we're going to take some time over the next couple of months to go through these 10. Now, you call them simple truths. If they're so simple, how come we don't do it?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Once people understand that, then it's not like a complicated algebraic equation. It's like they get it. Mm-hmm. They might not have ever come to these things on their own, or maybe in some ways they had an already a good grasp of it. What I don't claim is that I created them, out of thin air. Some of the concepts on teaching them and explaining them are very original. But these truths, they came out of all of my years of training, but also the best years of training were not school. The best years of training were what my patients have taught me, post-schooling. That's when I learned, the best of how to treat trauma. Was what people would call OJT, right? On the job training, where they showed me how they healed and what it took for people to heal. So I excitedly teach the 10th truth, which is about how humans heal. There's a myth attached to that one, and the myth is time heals all wounds. And, we'll get to the 10th truth if we all live that long, and I'll share with you that it's not about time passing. Healing is actually active, and there are things we can do to promote our healing, even after many, many, many years of suffering from one of these traumas or one of these losses. We can actually learn to heal and do it fairly quickly.
Very cool. All right. Hey, we'll take our final break. Come back and wrap all this up. You're listening to TNCRadio.live. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay tuned.
This blog on TNCRadio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 best scenic drives for truck drivers. One of the many benefits of being a truck driver is traveling the beautiful United States. Truck drivers spend their life on the road. Although they may get tired of driving, there's still routes and attractions most look forward to seeing. Whether it be cruising down the coast of California, driving in the Smoky Mountains, or passing through the Arizona desert, truck drivers all have their personal favorites. Here are the 5 most beautiful scenic drives rated by truck drivers. Pacific Coast Highway. The Pacific Coast in California, also called Highway 1, is one of the most iconic scenic drives in the United States. Driving along the Pacific Coast reminds you of a movie or TV show. It's about 650 miles long and runs from Capistrano Beach in Orange County to Leggett in northern Mendocino. San Juan Skyway. San Juan Skyway, a scenic byway in Colorado, is known for its million-dollar views. The byway goes across the San Juan National Forest and has provided truckers with beautiful views of the mountains and landscape. Beartooth Highway. Beartooth Highway in Montana is a 68-mile byway that runs through southwest Montana and northwest Wyoming and goes into Yellowstone National Park. Along this drive, you'll see one of the most diverse ecosystems accessible by vehicle in the United States. Keep in mind that the scenic highway closes in the winter due to adverse winter conditions and typically opens up on Memorial Day weekend. I-64 in West Virginia. West Virginia has some of the most beautiful landscapes on the East Coast. Driving down I-64 in West Virginia feels like you're in a painting. If you have time to stop along your truck route, check out Tamarack, located just off I-64 in Beckley, West Virginia. Tamarack is a unique culture center with art from local artisans and delicious food. If you want the full Appalachian experience, check out Tamarack. Utah's Route 12. Utah's Route 12 is one of the most scenic routes in the United States. It's often called the All-American Road. Also, there are 2 national parks at each end of the road, Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef, and many other unique scenic views. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is boosting the image of the industry by telling the story of trucking, and your story can be part of it. Upload a photo, tell us what you love about trucking, or send us a story about a good deed or charitable act in trucking. Be sure to follow us on social media and contact us through truckingmovesamerica.com. That's truckingmovesamerica.com.
welcome back in. TNC Radio.live, Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. So, Dr. Chris, let's keep talking on the social black belt.
Yeah, so I think tonight, given the time, I want to start to introduce the very first of the 10 truths and give some of our listeners a kind of a preparation, a background, and then next week dive in and really teach this truth. This is arguably the most important of the 10 truths, although I kind of think numbers 3 and 10 are right up there. But the first truth, Tom, is that our emotions, our feelings are not strange visitors from another planet, that we can actually understand, make sense of, and champion our own emotions. And to me, that is absolutely vital, because if we take the word emotions, which is to vex or stir up in the original Latin, I believe, and we use them synonymously with feelings. So we're talking about our feelings and emotions as if they're the same thing. And I may repeat that over the course of the course. But I want people to understand, okay, you have feelings, you have emotions, and so what? Well, the so what is virtually everything we do is in an effort to change our emotions or to push them in a direction that we want to go in, or stop feeling things that we don't want to feel. And I alluded to addictions before, that people will drink something, smoke something, snort something, shoot something, swallow something in an effort to change how they feel. But everything you do in the course of a day, even if you can't wait to call your wife and tell her something you heard today because you know she'll laugh, you want to do that because when she laughs, it changes your emotions. When you share something with someone and they listen with rapt attention, that changes how you feel. When you go for a stiff drink in the afternoon, or you turn on your favorite comedy, or you go get lost in a novel, or you go for a jog, or whatever it is you're inclined to do, these things are designed to change how you feel. People are forever wanting to feel better. And emotionally, we have learned that certain things we do make us feel better. And sometimes those things are not healthy for us, like eating an entire carton of ice cream, which I can do because I really like how it feels and how it tastes going down. And once I get started, it's easy to just keep on going. But also some things that are not only self-destructive, but they're other destructive, like bullying. People don't bully just randomly. They bully to make themselves feel better, and they feel better at the expense of somebody else. It's stepping on somebody else in an effort to feel better about me. By putting someone down, I can feel better about myself. I'm above them. And so when you look at all behaviors, you realize that behind these behaviors, people are motivated to feel differently. So why wouldn't we want people to understand as early in life as possible where their feelings come from? So recently, I had the privilege of being on one of the local campuses of Sarasota High Schools, a place called Riverview. And I asked the freshmen, where do your feelings come from? You know, your emotions, where do they come from? And people just assume, not just kids, but adults. You can ask a room full of adults, where do your feelings come from? And they'll tell you. They come from what happens to you. They come from your circumstances. They come from other people. We're indoctrinated with that, even from popular music. We hear things like, you made me love you. You know, that I didn't, these feelings don't come from me. They come from you. You made me feel these things. You make me happy. Or the colloquial, you pissed me off. Like, I don't take any responsibility. You did this to me. And I don't have any say in that. You did this, and because you did that, it hurt my feelings, or it pissed me off, or it made me angry, or it made me love you. And so looking at it that way, Tom, I'm just a pawn. I don't have any say. I am just bounced around by the circumstances of my day, of my life, how people treat me.
And it's also used to, with a statement like that, well, that's the way I feel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel.
That's a wonderful illustration. And people will follow that up with, so I can't do anything about it. That's just how I feel. I can't change that.
Are you not going to acknowledge my feelings?
Yeah. Yeah. And so if feelings come from other people, and if feelings come from circumstances, and if feelings come from situations, then I don't have any say in this. I just feel according to what happens to me and how you treat me and what I'm put through. And that would make me helpless in my life. But I would be the prisoner of my circumstances.
But isn't that what we're taught these days?
Yeah, it is. And that's why I want to, teach this to everyone I can, because it's just not true. You're not a prisoner of what's happening. You have plenty of agency. You have free will, and you have the capacity to change not only how you feel, but most importantly, your perception of things, the way you think about things. And I know we don't have a lot of time tonight, but I want to spend a lot of time next Monday when we talk again about really illustrating. I'm going to go into 4 separate parts of this first truth, that you can champion your own feelings. And remember, if I can and I do well, you know what that means? I'm not taking heavy medication, because I'm doing a great job with it. I'm feeling well. I'm able to deal with what life is dishing out. I'm handling difficult coworkers, family members, neighbors, just whatever life throws out at me. I have the capacity to handle that well and, feel well, because I know how to respond to it and how to think about it. And that's what I want to, share more specifically. Today, I wanted to give a background of what this is and where it came from. And I really want to dive into the 10 truths, but I want to take enough time with each one so that the listener says, I get it. I really get it. That was simple. I get it. So next time, I want to go into 4 parts to this first truth so that people really understand that I can change my thinking. And by changing my thinking, by changing my perceptions, by changing my attitudes, by changing my beliefs, I can change how I feel. And then I can feel as well as possible.
Fantastic. I love it. All right. Well, hey, coming up next, right here on tncradio.live. It's Hope Zavara. And Hope has Dr. Jeff Essen with her this evening. And this is part of our new Motivational Mondays, where we talk mind, body, and soul right here on tncradio.live. And so we've just talked about building stronger minds. Now we're going to talk about building up a stronger body. And then right after that, it's our friends from TFC Global with the founder of, the new director of She's Somebody's Daughter. And it's a very interesting program that they've put together, and the reach out that they've had across many people in Florida, Texas, and other places. So stay tuned for all of that right here on tncradio.live.